signal is given.
Ma'am? Excuse me. Thank you, I'm sorry.
You're on?
Okay. Just waiting for Shoshana. Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Simon Jacobson here. I welcome you all. Happy Thanksgiving. So I'm honored that you all made some time to come here to this holiday season. Thanksgiving actually is a holiday that is very much in the spirit of Jewish tradition. One of the most timeless virtues that are so often overlooked, but go back all the way to the beginning of time itself. And such a central theme in the Bible is the simple menschlichkeit and courtesy of saying thank you when someone helped you or in any way did a favor. And this thank you goes both to human beings and of course also to God. So you find different Thanksgiving offerings and prayers and blessings throughout the Torah. In a way you can say basically every Jewish holiday really is a form of Thanksgiving. So this Passover Seder table, when we thank God for the miracles and the providence of leading our ancestors out of Egypt, or as Thanksgiving at Sukkot, when we honor the fact that our ancestors were protected by the clouds of glory. You name the holiday, it ultimately comes down to some form of what we call in Hebrew, hoida'ah. There's even a carbon toda, an offering called a thank you offering, a Thanksgiving offering. So the concept of Thanksgiving is actually very much in the spirit, and long before the pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock and saw this new creature called turkeys running about on the plains of America, the idea of Thanksgiving, as I said, is a central biblical theme. And therefore I think it's just a beautiful thing to see, even though today Thanksgiving is more maybe for some about the balloons, Macy's Day parade, or the sales, or the beginning of the shopping season. Even though in an economy like ours, the news of course is that it's not going to be such a great shopping season. But before these ups and downs of the stock market, there was the concept of Thanksgiving. When you get down to it, the holiday itself is one of thanking. And Thanksgiving is an act of humility. You often find people, one of the sad things you see is that many people who've helped us along our journey, and when we succeed, we often forget those that were there when things weren't so well. You really see the quality of a person when they've risen, and they never forget people who were there, their early humble roots, humble beginnings, and that they still acknowledge it. Often people forget, or they start saying to themselves, "Well, you didn't really help me that much," or whatever it is that people come to their own conclusions. So if you really think about it, saying thank you is not always such a simple matter, even though it sounds so simple. Someone suddenly say thank you. But the fact is, and I hope nobody here is guilty of that, but I would say most of us probably are guilty somewhere. We don't know, it's not just about how many times you say thank you, it's about a quality acknowledgement. probably our parents are the ones that receive the least thank yous from us. Even though I know we live in a generation and an age where our parents are the cause of many of our problems, but they also can often be the root of many of our blessings. And parents are probably the most taken for granted. Perhaps because it's such a given that they're there for you. And as a result, there too you sometimes find there's a lack of this acknowledgement. So really, it's an exercise in looking at yourself, exercise in humility, exercise in not allowing success to get to your head to the point where you forget and you ignore the forces that helped you get to where you are. And that level, therefore, Thanksgiving is important to acknowledge in that context. Now, I chose the topic this evening called Thanksgiving Thoughts When Home Doesn't Feel Like Home. Many people in America became a tradition to visit home or to go home or to visit family and friends during this season, beginning with Thanksgiving. And for some, this is a very beautiful experience, revisiting, reunion with family and friends and people you grew up with. But for many, it's also quite many dread the experience, because homes are not always the place you want to feel comfortable in. As I remember, someone told me a few years ago, which is really when I decided to do this topic. Goes back when I was doing a radio show here in New York a few years ago. So it was an individual said to me, I really hate this time of the year. And he told me because the reason is he goes home and he says it reminds him of all the hypocrisy that was going on in our abusive and dysfunctional family. That we would always pose for pictures, and if I didn't smile, my father would whack me. We're here together, we have to look good, this family looks beautiful. He says, and beneath the surface, it was a very miserable life I lived. So there was this duplicity going on. And that's how I associate Thanksgiving and other holidays with. So I can't stand this time of the year. So I said to him, maybe you should this year not go back home. He says, oh no, if I do that, then my family will never talk to me again. And then he started laughing. He realized how much he was feeding into exactly what the dysfunctionality was in the first place. He was participating in it. And I said, I'm not saying you have to go ahead and rock the boat, but if you tell me your family is messed up anyway, so you're also part of it by simply not even protesting. So that year he had the courage not to go. And I hope he didn't report to his family that the rabbi told him not to come home, but frankly it wouldn't bother me if he did. And the truth is it began a big healing process, a long healing process for him. And then he comes to this class, he's not here tonight, but I saw just that actually create a situation where he today has reunited truly with his family, because he forced them all to acknowledge some truths, deeper truths. From a Torah perspective, there's an expression used in Kabbalistic texts, Hasidic texts, and the expression goes like this: that this world is called Alma de Shikra. It's called a Shikra in Hebrew. Sheker is false. It's called a world of falsity. Alma de Shikra. It's quite a depressing statement to call the entire universe the world of a lying world, a deceptive world. And some people say, well, there are people who lie in this world. There are people who know how to deceive others. But how could you just call the whole world Alma de Shikra, as if everything is a lie, without qualifying it? So in Jewish thought, you have what's the opposite of Alma de Shikra, a false world, is called Elam HaEmes, the true world. And when do we reserve the word Elam HaEmes? That's the expression used once a soul departs from this world, departs from the body, it goes back, as we call it, to Elam HaEmes, to the world of truth. Which too suggests that this world is not a world of truth. So the big question is this: how could you say there's no truth in this world? Everything is a lie. And you think about it, as I said, there are people who are definitely liars. There are people who are deceptive, duplicitous. Echad b'peh, echad b'lev is an expression called, they say one thing and feel another. In other words, basically a backstabber. You could smile to someone and stab them in the back, or today even in the front. And that's called duplicity. But there's also definitely truthful people in this world. There are people who find it difficult to lie. For whatever reason, whether it's genetic, guilt, conscience, whatever it is. The cynics like to say, lie once and lie twice, lie 3 times. You won't feel so bad about it. You have to get used to it. Once you get used to it, you just lose the conscience. So how do we call this world such a false world? So the answer is, it's actually just, I'll answer it with a short story connected to a chapter in the Torah a few weeks ago. And the chapter, Vayera, which we read 2 weeks ago. So the story goes, the Torah opens the chapter that God appears to Abraham. After Abraham had circumcised himself, God appears to him. We derive from that the mitzvah of Bikar Chelim, to visit the sick. Just as God visited Abraham when he was healing, we too do the same. So there's a story that goes, one of the Hasidic Rebbes, he was 4 or 5 years old, and his birthday fell out a week approximately that Parsha. So he went into his grandfather, who's called the Tzemach Tzedek. He went into him for a blessing. Birthday, he went into it for his grandfather, this 4 or 5 year old child. As he entered into his grandfather's chamber room, he burst out in tears. So his grandfather said, "Why are you crying?" So he said, "Because I just learned in Cheder, in Yeshiva, in school, I just learned that God appeared to Abraham, and I'm crying. Why doesn't God appear to me?" And the Tzemach Tzedek answered him that when a Jew, a tzaddik, determines at age 99, 100, to circumcise himself, he's worthy that God appeared to him. But so there's a lesson in that part of the story, the answer. But what was he crying about? How many people do you know cry over the fact that they cannot see godliness? People cry when their bank accounts are depleted. They cry when they lose, God forbid, a close one. They cry when they stub their toe. Or they cry over things that are meaningless or empty. They cry when love is lost, disappointments. There are many reasons to cry. But it always has a cause. How many people do you know just will burst out crying that they cannot see godliness in this world? So obviously this child, this 4 or 5 year old child, was not a simple child, because the fact that he was that sensitive. So what was he crying about? So I'll put it into simple English. It was like another chassid who once went into a Rebbe and said to him, "Why is it that you're so adamant and you're so passionate about the coming of Mashiach?" Jews believe, complete faith, that Mashiach will come, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that ultimately this life that we live right now will not be the way it is right now, that there'll be a world of harmony and peace, as the Rambam Maimonides says, a world filled with divine knowledge, as the waters cover the sea. So why are you so passionate about it? Look, we live in prosperous times. Jews today are free, relatively speaking, compared to a few hundred years ago. This is a world where we have all the freedoms. We could sit here and talk, send our children to any school we like. There are no informers. Thank God there are no Nazis or communists or others, or Cossacks or pogroms or inquisitions or crusades that tormented the Jewish people for thousands and thousands of years. So you could say this is a very healthy life. Why we should be desperate for anything to change? So this Rebbe answered him. He said to him, just because you get used to a state that's called illness, doesn't mean it is an illness. It just means that you became accustomed to it. That child that cried for God, what he was crying for is that we don't live in a world that is aligned with its purpose. So let me explain what that means. You buy a new computer, you buy a new piece of equipment, and you bring it home. So you have an operator's manual that tells you how to use this machine. If you follow the operator's manual, you set it up properly, the machine will function. You don't use it properly, the machine will break. Now what about our lives? Our lives aligned with a purpose? Is the machine of this universe working properly? Is life functioning? So of course, you have to define what the word functioning means. You know, if functioning means that you breathe, and your heart is beating, and your brain is working, then yes, biologically you can be called alive. But if you're not aligned with some purpose of your life, then think of a business without a mission statement. Can a business function without a mission statement? It's impossible. It's ludicrous to even think of it that way. Yet we see us functioning very well, or at least we think it's well, without necessarily knowing that there is a purpose. Many people don't even believe there is a purpose. There are millions of people who tell you life has no purpose. It's all random. It's an accident. Survival of the fittest is the prevalent theory today in the secular world. And even those that do believe there's a purpose, what is the purpose? And I don't mean to put anyone on the spot, but if you ask yourself this simple question, what is your mission statement? Why are you here on this earth? And to give the answer, I'm here to be happy, or to be successful, or to bring up a healthy family with values, or even to say to bring up a healthy family that will do Torah and mitzvahs, which many people would say, more observant. Well, that's the equivalent of a company saying, our mission statement is to make money and be a successful business. You show me which business has such a mission statement. Every business is supposed to be successful and functioning well and making money. Every business has to have a unique mission statement that's unique to this particular industry. So Google's mission statement is to organize all the information of the world and make it accessible to everyone, something like that. And Microsoft's mission statement is a computer in every home and in every office. And thus, they have to create software to make the computer indispensable to the home and office. So everything you do at home and everything you do in the office requires certain programs that they create, software. These are mission statements that sometimes cost millions of dollars to develop and years to think through and sum it up. It has to be something that is all-encompassing of every detail that that company will do. I'd like you to know, I'd like you to see how many people you can find on this earth that can state, my personal mission statement is as crystallized and succinct like these companies' mission statements. The reason that we don't necessarily have one is because no one ever forced us to have one. In a business, if you don't have one, there will be inefficiency, money will be lost, and ultimately someone's going to have to be accountable. In our personal lives, who are you accountable to? There's no banks or debtors that are going to come to you and say, hey, what's the purpose of your life? It's only a personal accountability between you and God. Now, why is this so vital? If a business cannot function without a mission statement, how can you and I? The only answer is that we're really maybe not really functioning. We're functioning, but not to the fullest. Hasidic masters like to say that anxiety is the voice of the soul. When a person is anxious, dead people are not anxious. The voice of the soul means that the soul is telling you something is not aligned. Something is not fulfilling your life. It means that what you do and who you are not aligned. Most people, you ask them, who are you? They give you their business card. But that's not who you are, that's what you do. Who you are is a much more complicated question. Who you are has to go into what is your identity, what are you really, who are you? Some people spend their entire lives and still don't know who they are. So this little boy was crying when he said he doesn't see God. It wasn't like he wanted to see some man with a white long beard sitting on a throne in heaven and striking us with lightning when we misbehave. That's not what the definition of God. But he said, he cried for the fact he doesn't see godliness. For him, the world was not a complete place. It was like a machine out of control. When we say the world is a deceptive world, it doesn't mean everyone has to be lying all the time. It means by nature this universe conceals its source. There's no person on this earth, even the greatest tzaddik, ain't tzaddik ba'aretz, it says. There's no tzaddik on earth that has not in some way failed in a certain subtle sense at least. Because in this universe, God himself concealed his presence. It's an agnostic universe. The greatest believer has to work constantly on reminding themselves that there's a God. Lev Yitzchak Barditchever once gathered the whole town in Barditchev on some Tuesday afternoon. He said, everyone, men, women, and children should come to the synagogue, the main synagogue. And the Rebbe, the tzaddik, is calling everybody, so of course you come. There must be some decree in heaven, something has to be done, we'll all pray. So everyone anticipating what's going to be, they come into the synagogue, they wait for the designated time. The Yitzchak Barditchever comes into the room, gets up by the bima, by the main table, bangs on the table, and says, Rabbi Sai, how do you translate Rabbi Sai? I don't really know. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever. He says, I want to tell everybody that there's a God in this world. And that was it. And he went back. You know, what is the meaning of that? Because even though we pay lip service, and people say, Baruch Hashem, thank God, and people make blessings, and there are devout Jews, there's some less devout, whatever, to really sense that there's God sitting with you every moment would mean that you would be incapable of any sin. You'd be incapable of a lie. You'd be incapable of doing anything that's not aligned to your deeper purpose. But we see people doing that all the time, even the most devout. Why? Because there's a certain concealment. There's a statement in the Talmud that goes like this, Gamva apu machtarte rachmana karya. If you know Aramaic, it means the following. It says a ganav, a thief, before he goes out to steal, he prays to God to succeed. So explain this phenomenon. He's praying to God. That means he knows what God wants. It's hardly anybody in this world is going to say that God really approves somebody stealing. You don't have to be a scholar to know the Ten Commandments. It's one of the Ten Commandments. Lo signev. So here he goes out to steal. So it's one thing, go out to steal and make believe, or he's ignoring, or at this moment he doesn't see God. But to pray to God to help him succeed in a thing that God just told him not to do should be considered to be some form of insanity, right? It's like someone gave you the keys to the bank. The owner says, make sure nobody steals anything. You say, come, listen, I want you to help me steal from the bank. You don't go to the boss who gave you the keys and tell him to help you. You want to be a thief? God forbid you be a thief, but you don't go to the one that told you not to do it. So the truth is, the Talmud also says that ein adam ever, a person will not sin unless there's a nichnus by ruach shtus, only in a moment of insanity. Not that you can claim insanity when you do something wrong, but what does the Talmud mean? Ruach shtus, a moment of folly, a moment of insanity. And the answer is very simple, actually. Would a healthy person put their hand in fire? No. There's even a law in Jewish law. There's a thing called a shemer. You hire a guard to protect your property. So since you're paying this guard, there are different types of guardians. But let's say a person you've hired, you pay. So he's getting paid to protect your property. If your property gets damaged, he's responsible. So there's a question: what happens if you gave someone an animal to protect? A cow. Farmer gave a cow to protect to a guard to protect the cow, and the cow jumps into a fire and gets killed or damaged, hurt. Is the guard responsible or not? And the answer is he's not. Why? Because a healthy cow doesn't jump into fire. No normal animal would go into fire on its own. So the guard, was hired to protect the animal from natural negligence, not to fall, not to, things that you can expect. How is he to know this cow was insane and would jump into fire? Unless he was specifically told, he was stipulated, that this cow jumps into fire, you can't hold him responsible because how would he anticipate that? So this is even an animal. Because creatures, it's natural, we don't hurt ourselves unless there's something wrong with the person. So if we can't put our hand in fire, the question is, how is it possible that we hurt each other? The Talmud says the Jewish people are like one large organism. And just like it's not inconceivable that the right hand hit the left hand, it's inconceivable that one person hurt another. So why is it that we're hurting each other all the time? Parents can hurt children, children can hurt parents, let alone strangers. The answer is because we don't feel it. You may understand it intellectually. It may make sense. It's one large organism. It may make sense that God is with us all the time and that there's a force that keeps everything alive every moment. But when push comes to shove, emotionally, you don't feel it. And since you don't feel it, there's a moment of insanity, a moment of disconnect when a person does something harmful to others, which ultimately means you're also harming yourself. The fact that you don't feel it just means you're blinded. And that's why this world is called a false world. It doesn't mean you have to lie every second. It means that the nature of existence is such. It conceals its true source. And that's why that child cried. When he heard that God revealed himself to Abraham, he realized that a true world is a world where you see the source all the time, you're connected to it. And he cried because he could not see that source. And that's why the Kabbalists or the Hasidic masters call it Alma D'Shikra, as I said. It's a false world. So the Kabbalists explained that Arizal has a doctrine called the Tzimtzum. I discussed this in previous classes. The idea of how the process of God concealing His presence. Some call it Hester Ponim, the concealment process. It's a mysterious thing, and it's not really the topic of this discussion. Why am I elaborating on this entire point? So I go back to the theme of home, living in the home. So I mentioned earlier about the guy that I described, who hated going home for the Thanksgiving and for holidays. Because he said, my home was not a home, it was a show. He said, my father was a tyrant, an angry man, but appearances were everything. No one was supposed to know how abusive he ever was. And he denied it to us and so on. So I go there, and we all have to pose for the pictures, and I can't tolerate it, this type of deception, duplicity. And finally, he began to heal when he was able to protest and say that enough is enough, I'm not going to be part of this masquerade. So it's an interesting thing. What is a home? What is a home? And this is not just a question between us, there's also on a theological level. It says that the ultimate purpose of existence, of creation, why this universe was created. So the mystics have different reasons for it. But the ultimate reason given is based on a medrash. The medrash says following: that God desired, Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu, God desired, the word is Nesava, desired, Lasas lo yizbarach dira b'tachtenim, that the human being, all of us, should create a home, dira, a home, b'tachtenim, that this physical world, material universe, that is a duplicitous and a lying, a deceptive universe, should become a home for the divine. Now this medrash is of course based on the Bible, on the Torah itself. Where do you find the concept in the Torah? The temple. Talk about a mission statement. 2-word mission statement is the purpose of all existence. God says to Moses, "V'asuli migdash, build for me a temple, a holy place." Migdash means a holy, from the word kedusha, a holy space, a holy sanctuary. V'shachanti, these are the 2 words. V'shachanti b'seicham, and I will rest, I will dwell, I will rest among you. 2 words. So the Shalah, one of the middle-aged great scholars, asked the question, the verse seems to be inconsistent. In Hebrew, or in English, you say, "V'asuli migdash, build for me a sanctuary, and I will rest in what? In it, in the sanctuary." What's the statement? Build for me a sanctuary, and I will rest among them. B'seicham. We're not talking about a them. We're not talking about people. We're talking about a building. It should have said, "V'shachanti b'seichai." I will rest in it. And the Shalah answers, simple and profound at the same time, that the purpose is not that God rests in bricks and mortar and wood. Is that the whole purpose of the temple is that God should rest among the people, in our hearts and our souls. And frankly, the reason we build today a temple, a synagogue, is because God told Yecheskel, the prophet, Ezekiel, that after the destruction of the temple, and he bemoaned the fact, where will the people find you? He said, build for me, we don't have a temple any longer. God said, Ve'ela migdash ma'at, build for me mini sanctuaries. Every synagogue will be like a mini temple. Which of course suggests that God will rest not in the synagogue, will rest in the people through this structure. In other words, it's all about a universe where on its own can deny a connection to anything higher, and you can live your life selfishly, narcissistically, driven by self-interest, which is a tendency that most people gravitate to. Without any effort, the first thing is Adam avos atzmei, which means self-love. Adam karev etzel atzmei, a person, the first thing is self-interest. Now that per se is not necessarily a bad thing, if you recognize it and you realize you have to somewhat temper it, which really is the whole purpose of the Torah in the first place. Every mitzvah helps a person to sensitize themselves to the extent that they temper that ego and self-interest. Charity, of course, is the ultimate. Tzedakah is the ultimate counterforce to everything that is self. In the holy book of Tanya, in chapter 37, the fascinating analysis of the power of tzedakah, charity. It says, why is tzedakah shkula keneged kolam? Why is charity the greatest of all mitzvahs? In a way that all the other mitzvahs, and charity is on a kind of scale, weighs as much, so to speak, as all the other mitzvahs. And the explanation that he gives there is because every mitzvah is meant to release the divine energy within the physical universe. Which means, for instance, when you take a piece of parchment, which is made out of animal skin. So on its own, it's neutral. And you take it and you sanctify it by writing holy words. A scribe writes the holy words of a mezuzah, let's say, or a Sefer Torah, or tefillin. So you sanctify this piece of material universe and you turn it into something holy. Every mitzvah sanctifies another part of this universe. You're about to eat a meal, and you make a blessing on the food, and you eat the right foods, so your food becomes elevated to a state of holiness. Your table becomes an altar. Basically, the mitzvah is, as we say, every mitzvah has its blessing, kasher kedishanu. The mitzvah is that through a mitzvah, you sanctify the universe that you live in. And every mitzvah corresponds to another corner of your universe. So from the moment we awake till the last moment till we go to sleep, every part of life has another area that you can sanctify. Charity, he explains, tzedakah, sanctifies all of you. Why? Because money, he calls us chaya nafshe. Money has become the symbol of everything we are. That's why people hold on to their money more than anything else. I remember reading an article in the New York Times, a very funny article. So they had this, people had this lunch, a group of friends, and they were talking about every intimate detail of their life, no problem. You know, everything was open today. And suddenly one person said to the other, and literally every detail, things you don't usually talk about. And one person said to the other, by the way, how much money do you have put away in your retirement account? The person froze. Comes to money, more sacred than the most intimate secrets of your life. So he explains in Tanya, why do people hold on to money? Why is it so difficult to give? Precisely because money is the symbolic of everything you think you are important about. Your time, your energy, your ingenuity, all that. Money is like the symbol of that. It's like your soul energy, as he calls it. And therefore, to give away from it, you're not giving a piece of yourself. It's like giving all of you. What do you mean? This is everything I've invested in. And precisely because it's direct proportion to how difficult it is also why it's so freeing as well. It's the ultimate counterforce that frees a person from the self-interest of this universe. So to go back to that theme, sanctify this world and make it a home for me, I shall rest among you, is the purpose of existence. To put it in more contemporary terms for some who need to translate it into language that I think can be more, I say, relevant maybe. We know today in physics that everything is matter and energy. Einstein, the good Jew, discovered something which was always known by the mystics, is that matter and energy are the same thing. E equals mc squared. Matter is energy, and energy and matter can be, and from matter you turn matter into energy, and energy creates matter. In a way, you can say the purpose of existence is when matter and energy become fused as one. So we have what we call a body and a soul. The outer universe, the outer surface level, and there's the inner forces that make it work. When is something healthy? When those two are aligned. A lack of health is when those two are not aligned. Like I mentioned before, when what you do and who you are not aligned, you have yourself the dichotomy, which ultimately leads to chaos. Even health in the physical sense. What is health? When your physical body allows all the inner forces to flow through you, if there's any, God forbid, blockage in your circulatory system. Look at a young newborn child, how they breathe. You'll see a newborn child, the chest of a child, you see it rise and fall. Because its heart is healthy, it's new and fresh, and its breathing is very fresh. They say by the time you're around 15 years old, you're only using around 80% of your lungs, because the toxins of this world are now settled at the bottom of your lung. That's why if you take a full breath in, you usually cough. Children are breathing with their entire lungs until this toxic world gets to them. Health is essentially when your body is breathing, when the flow of life energy, whether it's through blood or through breath or through the other forces, are flowing in a consistent flow that is so seamless that you can't even tell. What does health feel like? If you can describe what it feels like, it's not a good sign. Someone says to you, what does health feel like? You say, oh, it feels like that, feels like that. No. When you feel something, it means that something's wrong. Illness feels like something. Health should be so seamless like it's invisible. It's when you sense it, then you know that it's not, something's wrong. So, the universe we live in can seem functional on one end, but if it's not connected to the energy within it, there's always some type of blockage. And that's why that Rebbe cried as a child. And that's why the purpose of existence is to create a home for the divine. So let's now analyze what is this thing called a home. What is a home? So there are houses and there are homes. The meaning of a home is something that I know eludes many of us, because we may not have grown up in homes. You may have grown up in a palace, or grown up in an abode, or in a structure, or in a room, in a house that had many rooms. But a home is not a house. A home is something else completely. A home is an environment where you can be completely natural yourself. When we say we leave home, when you go outside of your house, what do? You have to put on different masks that we wear, different garments, not just physically, because we're encountering different people. You come into a room, for example, for the first time you meet strangers there. You're not being yourself. You conceal what's going on inside of you because you try to adapt and figure out the lay of the land, you know. When you get accustomed to yourself, to people, and you're comfortable with them, they start seeing more of you. Most of us would not like strangers to see all of us. Even though the people like our siblings or our parents or our spouses see the worst and maybe the best of us. The worst for sure, the best hopefully. Because when you're in a place where you are, let your shoes off, you take your shoes off, and you let everything you just let things loose and you don't have your defenses up, that's when you're in your most comfortable space. But we learn as we grow into adults that you can't just do that anywhere because you'll be hurt. We live in a world that's hostile, that's cruel. There are many exploitive forces, there are many dangerous forces. So newborn children actually are very, very pure. Children don't know this. Children do not believe that there are criminals in this world. Children on their own would never expect that they could be hurt. Now, people will dismiss it and say, you know why? Because children are stupid, or they're inexperienced, or they're naive. No, you know why? Maybe because children are a little closer to God than we are as adults. And they live in a natural sense a seamless world. The concept of duplicity, that you say one thing and you do another, is not the world of truth. Children are truthful human beings. When was the first time you ever lied? You probably cannot remember. But the first time you lied was the first, and where did you learn how to lie? You learned it from your parents or from the adults that lied to you. When you saw that it's something you do, then you get used to it, and then you become, this is what we do. In a collective sense, for instance, when you read the Torah, when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, before they ate from the tree of knowledge, it's compared to a state of childish consciousness. But not childish in the sense that they were children. They actually, says in the Meditation that they were created at 20 years old. So they had a mature consciousness, but they were children in their innocence, timimus, simplicity, like it says in this week's chapter, that Yaakov was ishtam. What is simplicity? Simplicity doesn't mean simple and not complex. Simple means seamless. There is no dichotomy. There are no two worlds. What you see is what you get. That's how children think, and that's how children feel. And in many ways, we adults, when we are drawn to a child, you look at the beauty of a child. You remember a world where there was no dichotomy. So Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, it says, did not even sense their own sexuality. It says they were naked, but they did not know it. Just like a newborn child. A newborn child is not conscious of its own nakedness because there's nothing wrong with it. Why would nakedness be... God created a human being. Why is something naked unclean or unhealthy or inappropriate? It's only because we become conscious of ourselves. And there's like two worlds, and you yourself, like kol ha-pesel b'mumei pesel is the expression. Your consciousness of yourself is what separates you from your source. The Maimonides writes, and others as well, that when they ate from the tree of knowledge, it says they suddenly were ashamed, and they covered themselves with leaves, whatever, different opinions. And that's when the garment industry was born, basically. Why did they cover themselves? Because they were ashamed. What were they ashamed of? What happened? What changed? Why eat from a tree of knowledge? What changed? The change was, is explained by different scholars, was that before, they were complete, seamless, transparent channels of what God wants you to be. When your body is an expression of your soul, all of it, even the sexual part of it, is a sacred thing. When they ate from the tree of knowledge, they suddenly assumed a self-consciousness, being self-conscious. They suddenly assumed an ego, a personality that was apart from their divine Tzelem Elokim, the divine image. And once you're apart, then you become self-conscious. As you become self-conscious, they no longer had that childish innocence. And in many ways, the whole purpose of life is to return to that place. That doesn't mean we're talking about opening up nudist colonies. That's not my... hope nobody takes it the wrong way. It means that the point is to go back to a place where seamlessness is the ultimate goal. Today, most people are cynical and they say, seamlessness, that's for naive people. But the greatest things you see in truly tzaddikim, holy people, is that as much as they understand this universe, and as wise as they are, they never lose their innocence. Most of us have lost our innocence. And once you lose it, you can't return. Once Adam and Eve ate from that tree, they couldn't just say, we made a mistake, we go back. The fact is, we have never gone back. You say, Mashiach will come, Messianic times, we will return to that place. But since then, everything changed. It's like we all know, in your mind you could say, if I tried something, it wouldn't be so bad. Once you try it, once you taste it, you do not return. You're now in a new state of consciousness. And in that sense, so you have the two options of a type of seamlessness where matter and energy, or the outer and inner are all aligned, or they're not aligned. The world in which we live, it's not aligned, even if your life you think is functioning. And this is what a home is about. So let's talk on a simple level. I think I mentioned this. I wanted to share with you because it had such impact on me. I remember at the time. You've heard of the guy John Bradshaw, right? He was one of the first in the 70s that introduced in psychology the concept of the inner child. Now he himself was a pastor, then became a healer, one of the pioneers in the healing world. His father was alcoholic, so he grew up in quite an unhealthy environment. So I remember seeing once a workshop he did. And if you want like an example of what you talk about, what a home should be like, listen to this. It was a workshop, and I was just, I didn't even know what it was about, but I saw it. Where he had in his a group of around 30, 35 people, maybe a little more. And there's men and women, different backgrounds. And when I tuned in, I remember what I saw was, I think it was a video, I don't even remember. Someone had given it to me to watch. So he was speaking to the group, and at that point he turned on some recording, and the room started reverberating with a sound. The sound was the sound of a heartbeat. You ever hear a heartbeat? Especially when it's amplified. It's an interesting sound. So it's like, thump, bump, bump. But loud, bump, 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 bump. But the real heartbeat, it was the actual heartbeat that you heard. And it had a certain type of mesmerizing effect, like a hypnotic effect. And this was going on maybe a minute. And it was in silence. Everybody was listening to this heartbeat. And then he asked everybody, at the beginning I was like a little sarcastic about, what is this thing? But it was interesting what evolved. He asked everybody to close their eyes. And he began to speak. He said, this, imagine, is the heartbeat of your mother, who carried you for 9 months in her womb. And this is what a child hears. Day in, day out, 24/7. 6 days of the week, and Shabbos too. This heartbeat. That's what a child hears. And hears it from within. There's nothing other sound. There's probably some other sounds as well, but the heartbeat is definitely prominent. And the mother's heartbeat is busy. Even the mothers that have no hearts, their heartbeat is working if the child is developing in the 9 months. That's just a joke. And he says, so this is what you experienced for 9 months without stop, without fail. And then he began talking. He's saying, and now you're about to enter into this world. And he's talking as if your mother's talking to you. And he started saying, as the mother was saying, I've waited for you so long. I prepared a special room for you. Special new clothing. A beautiful crib with white linen, a blanket. I will always protect you. If anybody should ever want to harm you, I will always be there for you. He went on and on. This is maybe for 3-4 minutes of how a mother is telling a child what it will do for the child. Complete nurturing. You're always special, no matter what. No matter what disappointments you have in life, you can rise to the occasion. You always have me and your family behind you. Literally, after around 3 minutes, everybody in the room, including me watching this, was in tears. And, you could say it was manipulative, whatever you want, but I'll tell you why. Because what he was saying resonated with such truth that you recognize that this is what you should have heard if you didn't hear it. And if you did hear it, it brought you back to that type of place. The unconditional love, without any of the jaded insecurities and defense mechanisms and all the stuff that adults can project on children, and what a child deserves. The nurturing environment of this heartbeat, and all that comes with it, and not just physically being nurtured and protected and provided for, but also psychologically. Unfortunately, and this is probably why many people cried as well, most people did not get this in their lives. So if you want to describe what a home is not just a physical structure that protects you from the elements. If it's snowing or raining outside, you have a roof on top of your head and a locked door. A home is an environment where you can be completely comfortable, because you're loved unconditionally. And you can be yourself, and you can build the confidence that you have to build. There's no doubt in my mind, especially when you look at Torah psychology, and the emphasis of the Torah on chanech l'nar, about educate the child from when it's very young. You know, today's psychology, just in the last 20, 30 years, came to discover something which was a timeless truth in Torah thought. That the most formative years of your childhood shape your rest of your life. Today this is common. Everyone will say, well, it's so obvious. It wasn't so obvious. Read this book on child psychology from 1945. You'll be amazed. It's not a common fact. Then children were seen as adults in the making. You know, like one person once told me, I had this couple that I know from this class. They came to the class here, and it's a sad story and a funny story at the same time. They were quite well to do, let me put it this way. Money was not their problem. They had plenty of other problems, but that was not it. And they came to consult with me. A very important meeting. They said it's a very important decision they have to make. So I thought, who knows? Maybe they're not getting along, whatever. No. The question is, should they have a child? Now they had 4 cats and maybe 6 dogs, and they had all the possessions they needed. The question is, should they have a child? So I asked them, why not? They were married 6, 7 years, I think. Why not? You will not believe what they told me. They said, because it's very expensive. And the woman actually was an actuary, so she had it all figured out, the calculations. She told me, this is not a joke. This is a New York couple. She said like this, that today they calculated that an average child will cost its parents from the moment, we're talking about from the moment of conception. Everything is, till the child is able to be self-providing, something like $3-4 million. And she had it all worked out. She told me, this includes the downtime that a pregnant woman can't go to work. This includes the time, all the Pampers, education, of course, doctor bills. So it's like a $4 million investment. Okay, and that's a lot of money, right? When it accumulates. So like when does it return? Every investment has to have a return. So they approximate that around at age 36, the average child will begin to be worth its while, so to speak. Because after leaving school, you still have to pay the school loans, and that $4 million still has not been repaid. Not that the child, but I even asked her, I said, so what do you expect your child to give you back a $4 million check at some point? No, but like society, this expense to society, so to speak. So around the age 36 is the time when you start making enough that's more than that $4 million that was invested in you. And therefore the question is whether they should do this. Now they had more than $4 million, trust me, but it's a lot of money. You don't just invest $4 million without discussing it, right? Even if it's spread out over 20 years. They were actually quite serious. It sounds ridiculous, but they were. So I said to them, I didn't know what to say. So I said, then I had a great brainstorm. I said, I'd like to invite you for Shabbos to Crown Heights. Okay. They had no clue why, but I knew why. And I set them up at my sister-in-law's house. But I didn't tell them what kind of house this was. I just said she's very nice. She's a teacher. She's an academic. She's a good person and a husband. Yeah, a family. So they agreed. They come Friday. I told Sarah was her name, so I said my sister. I said to her, couple, very nice couple. Just don't tell them the details of your family. I need them to find out by surprise. Okay, they come Friday night, and I ate there to make sure to welcome them in. And of course, Friday night the family gathers, and they one of them, he whispers to me, he says, they look alike, all these kids. Now we're talking about a family, and not all of them were there because they're there, of 17 children. And at some point, I said, well, they're brothers and sisters, They said, so how many children do you have, Mr. Lieberman? So he said, 17 children. So they said, from how many marriages? No, only one. No twins, all healthy children, and very well put together. And I tell you, It was such a pleasure to see the culture shock that was developed. Look at us. It was great. He couldn't believe it. So what is 17 times 4 million? I asked her. You know? She said, and trust me, they do not have money, not for 17, not for half of that. How they manage, I don't know. It's one of these miracles. They had a shock with their lives. Then I had this whole conversation with them. And they saw how happy they were. And the children were, as I said, she's not a harried woman. My sister-in-law, she looks like a slim woman. You can never believe that she had 17 children. You know her, right? But that provoked the conversation, which took them completely to another world. You know, they never even thought like this. I said, what do you think children are? Some type of, like a tax write-off? Child is a life. What do you look at yourself? You were once this child that you want to bring into this world. And we get so jaded, so caught up in the whole dichotomy. And today, thank God, you know, they don't have 17, but they have 6 children. Wow. 6 times 4, 24 million. Yeah, I always make jokes with her. I say, so 24 million is a lot of money. She says, yeah, we can afford it. And of course, they've seen that the amount that you get in return is a lot more than that little investment. The love and everything that comes with it. So a home is something that is actually, sadly, a little a rarity today. Doesn't mean that the number of children creates your home, but it's an environment that is not shaped by the world around us. Today, most homes you go to are just an extension of the world outside, except with a lock on the door, and you decide when people let them in, when you don't let them in. A home is an environment that's as close to the womb as possible. God did make it interestingly that we are all born from 9 months in the womb. Why is it that way? Why not? You're going to create children, have children, let them. They need to spend a little time in the womb, a week, a few days. Why 9 months? So the Kabbalists explain that 9 has to do with 9 spheres. It's a whole process that a soul goes through to get accustomed to this universe. The Talmud actually says that a child in its mother's womb is taught the entire Torah and then made to forget upon birth, which is why we have this cleft. You can't see it under my mustache here. Anyone wants to demonstrate? You want to show us a cleft? Okay. There's a cleft above your upper lip. There's a cleft because it says, like the angel said, that upon birth we're made to forget. So the question is asked, why teach a child the entire Torah and then make it forget? What's the point? As a matter of fact, in halachic terms, in Jewish law, you're not even allowed to study something and forget it. And here, intentionally, an angel comes and makes us forget. And altogether, what does it mean? Today, with sonograms and all these tests, you can see there's no little white angel inside a mother's womb with a candle teaching the child Chumash. So what does the Talmud mean? So obviously, the Talmud is talking metaphorically. What do I mean metaphorically? Just like the body physiologically develops during the 9 months, so does the soul, so does the psyche. And even though we're made to forget on a conscious level. There's some things we never forget, which is why children gravitate to certain truths. You don't need to teach a child, for example, certain things. Newborn children have been documented to react to music. So you could ask the question, how do they never heard music before? How do they know to react? How come they move to music? How come it soothes them when you sing to them? You know, it's one thing, once you sing to them a few times, they get used to it. And even language itself, which is a phenomenon that still remains a mystery in science. How do children learn how to speak? Do they have words inside of them? I'm not talking about the language. Obviously, whether it's Russian or Yiddish or English or French, it determines on what language they're parents. But the idea of communication, it's pretty amazing. Speech is an amazing thing to be able to organize ideas and words. You have to say there's something inside of them even beforehand. So the idea of teaching the child the entire Torah before it was born in its mother's womb is not just teaching it halachas to know what time Shabbos begins and whether chicken is kosher or not. It's the value system. It's the truths, the divine truths that the Torah carries. A certain resonance. You know the word resonance. When you hear a real truth, it resonates with you. What does that mean? It means it was always inside of you, you just were not aware. That's always a sign of truth. Truth is not someone sells it to you or gives it to you. It's inside of you, except you may not have been aware. Someone says it, say, now I get it. I always knew it. What do you mean? Where did you always know it from? Who taught it to you? So what we're taught is that inside your unconscious, you have a certain standard of truth, what is right and what is wrong. A child senses what is right and what is wrong until, as I said earlier, it learns to lie, and adults distort or corrupt the child. But a child on its own, very much like nature itself. Nature itself has a sense of, a natural sense, an inherent an instinct. And that instinct comes from something that's imbued into the child during its journey. So we all began with a home for 9 months in our mother's womb. Even if the mother is a dysfunctional mother who was very harmful to our child, unfortunately there are more than we'd like. But God said, you know what, before anyone comes into this world, I'll make sure that I protect them for 9 months, no matter what. They will be protected. Actually, some scholars even write, they compare, it says, Eilam Katan Ze Adam. The universe is a large organism, and the human being is like a small universe. So the universe, too, began immersed in embryonic fluids. It says when the universe was created, everything was covered in water. And then God separated the upper waters from the lower waters. So the idea of being immersed in water is like being immersed in truth. That's the concept of a mikveh, for instance. So the Rambam writes, Maimonides writes, you don't go to a mikveh to clean yourself like a bathtub or a shower. Me hadas hatar. Water is symbolic of knowledge. When you're inside water, it's like being inside the womb. There's a certain spirituality about it, spiritual cleansing. It's like being immersed in water. Fish in the sea have a certain purity to them. That's why fish don't have to go through the same ritual slaughter that animals have to go through. Fish in Jewish thought are considered to be the purest of all creatures because they're always immersed in their source. A fish never feels separate from its source, like land mammals. That's why you have the story in the Talmud when Rabbi Akiva was asked, the Romans, why is it that Jews are so desperate, are so adamant at constantly studying Torah? They won't study Torah for a few days or for a while. So he gave the analogy of the fish in the water, fish in the sea, and a fox comes over to the edge of the water and says to the fish, why don't you come out and let's socialize, change of ambiance, to come live on the land a little. And the fish say to the fox, you consider the wise fox. You're not so wise. If we leave this water, we die. The fox, of course, was not interested in their welfare. He was interested in a good meal. But the point was that the fish said, we are connected to our source. And remember before I discussed about being connected to the source. So fish are considered, in Kabbalistic terminology, it's called Nunayama. The fish of the sea are come from the world called Alma Diskasya, the hidden worlds, the world of thought. What is the world of thought? The world of thought is immersed constantly in its source. The words that we use when we think, the words are like engulfed in the waters of thought. When we speak or when we write, the words get disconnected. So when you talk about a home, you're talking about an environment of seamlessness, where you are completely accepted, and everything about you is driven by one thing and one thing only, that God created you. And therefore you're indispensable. You're not your parents' property. You're not anyone's property. You're a gift given to your family, a soul that was sent to this earth, a divine soul. And parents' role is to simply protect and cherish this gift. This small little truth, if all of us had it in a consistent manner in our childhood, trust me, our entire lives would be different. Almost all social maladies are a result from the distortion or the lack, being deprived of this so-called nurturing oxygen that every child deserves. Now, some of us have grown up in healthier families and some in very unhealthy families. Sometimes if you want to appreciate health, you have to look at the opposite extreme. I'm not trying to suggest that all of us live in a dysfunctional world, even though many say that's the case. I'm not here to judge anybody. You know, these are topics people don't like to talk about. But I will say, in the spirit of this theme, that no matter who you are, no matter what kind of childhood you grew up in, not only do you deserve, but you also have the power to create a home, even if you did not grow up in a home that provided you with that type of nurture. I'll discuss that in a moment. Just wanted to add one thing with the water. You probably know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was not given that name when he was at his bris. His Jewish parents, Amram and Yocheved, gave him a different name. The Talmud talks about a different name, different opinions. But it was not Moses. It was not Moshe. Where did he get this name Moshe from? Which is pretty odd. That the greatest man of God, that no prophet, no one ever lived that saw God face to face like Moshe. The name we use, most people don't even know the name that he was actually given. Is a name given to him by a Gentile woman, and of all people, the daughter of the Hitler of that time, Pharaoh. Pharaoh's daughter discovered Moses in the basket on the water, and she reached out to bring him to the shore. And because she reached out, she said, because I drew Moses out of the water, that became Moshe Rabbeinu's name. So good, you could say there's some lessons from that, and it's an important message, and there's a story. But this became his permanent name, overriding the name that his two holy parents gave him. This is unprecedented in history. You don't have anywhere such a story like that. You know, you have people who have kinuyim, different names that were given to them, nicknames or names based on certain activities they did or certain achievements. But this is unique, especially Moshe. This question is asked, many different answers given. The ultimate answer, of course, is that the Torah, when it talks about names and people, is trying to tell us about the true personality of an individual. That's what a name is. A name has meaning. That Moshe, this Pharaoh's daughter, recognized, consciously or unconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly, the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu's soul. And this is the way the Hasidic teachers explain it. Minamayim mishisu means he was drawn from water. There are water souls and there are land souls. There are souls that come from the world of thought, and there are souls that come from the world of speech. Moses' soul came from an unconscious place that was higher than most souls. A place of water. In water, everything is concealed. Which explains another thing. Why Moses was a man of no words. Another oddity. It says in the Torah that Moses, one of the reasons, excuses he tries to give to God why he should not choose him as the savior of the Jewish people. Because I cannot speak. And in three different ways he says it. Lo ish dvar manechi, I'm not a man of words. Aral sfasayim, my lips are distorted, whatever the word, or blocked. Kvad peh v'kvad loshen, my language and my mouth come difficult to me. In all kinds of different ways, Moses says, why are you sending me to be a speaker to Pharaoh? I cannot speak clearly. Some say he had an actual speech defect due to something that happened when he was a child in Pharaoh's palace. But regardless, it is strange. The greatest communicator in history, Moses, the one who every word that he uttered we know today, and repeat and learn again and again and analyze, was a person who technically at the time was not really the best orator and couldn't speak that clearly. So why would God choose such a person, or the other way around? Why allow Moses to be a person that doesn't have clarity of language? Not only that, there's an entire book in the Torah called Eila Hadvarim Asher Diber Moshe. These are the words that Moses spoke. The person that the Torah earlier says is Lo ish dvarim anechi, a person that has no words. Like a direct contradiction. These are the words of a man that has no words. And one of the powerful explanations given to this goes back to the water. Moses was not a man of words because his intensity and soul was on a level that was beyond any words and expression. Words are a limitation. Can you express the depths? Can you describe in words the depths of your intimate soul? There's a place inside of us that words simply are inadequate. And that's where Moses dwelled, in water. So the daughter of Pharaoh, when she drew him out of water, was a technical thing. She was out of water, but it meant something much deeper. That Moses' soul came from that nurturing place. And that's when Moses becomes the nurturer, the one that builds the home for God, the Mishkan, and the one that gives Jews the opportunity to build a home in their own lives. What's Moses called? The shepherd. Roya Yisrael. Roya Neman. What is a shepherd? A shepherd is a nurturer. Why was Moses the leader? It says, how did God test Moses, the leader? Just like he tested King David with sheep. That he was a shepherd by his father-in-law Yisrael. And once one sheep in a big flock wandered off, Moses was sensitive enough to recognize one sheep among thousands, and he went pursuing the sheep who went to a brook of water because it was thirsty. Moses was so disturbed, he carried the sheep back on his shoulders to the flock. And God said, this is how a man behaves with sheep. When no one's watching, who would even know one sheep is missing? Pursue that sheep, bring it back, and be sensitive to its needs for a drink of water. That's a man I will trust my people with. This is called a nurturer. This is called a person you can trust to build the home. And Moses was the builder of the home. Who do you think went fundraising for the Mishkan? The great man comes down from Sinai, from the Torah. You think he's a scholar, he's a teacher. Go hire a fundraiser. No, God says, you go to people, gather gold, silver, and copper. Build for me a temple, and I will rest among you. Because God needs someone that is a nurturer, a home. So the idea of building a home, both personally and collectively, and even for the divine, is the ultimate purpose of existence. And even on a technical level, we say we live in a world with hostile elements. We build civilized cities and communities. We build structures to protect from the elements. But that's on a physical level. On the deeper level, building a home represents the idea that we're given a world that is hostile, selfish, greedy, corrupt, and our mission is to build an oasis in this world where corruption and self-interest is not the driving force. What is? Love, nurturing, giving people a feeling that they're in this environment, they belong here, that you are indispensable. This is what healthy parents provide for children. This is what a shepherd does. And this is the home we are expected to build for God in this universe. So the question is this. If you grew up in a home like this in your own life, you were blessed, you have obviously a great gift that you should never take for granted, because it creates a foundation in your home. Like I discussed last week, you can't build a home on a foundation that's constantly shaking. The unconditional love, the security, the confidence that you have within you growing up in a confident home with secure parents is like a foundation that will remain with you the rest of your life. It's like birds can fly from a nest only when they have a nest. If you don't have a secure nest, you don't have the security to go fly. You'll always be afraid to do so. Fear is a direct result from a lack of inner confidence. You're afraid to go, you're afraid to you'll lose, you'll be disappointed, you'll fail. Many of us have been told in homes that were insecure that you're not good at anything. Anyone who tells you you're not good at anything is usually a person who doesn't think that they're good at anything either. That's what you do. That's what insecure people do. Insecure people spread a message of insecurity. Secure people always make you feel secure. Simple mathematics. So if you grew up in a home like that, it's like any foundation. We often take for granted that gift. But people like that are people you can rely on because they have a certain confidence. And hopefully they don't get distracted, and we'll build homes like that as well. The rest of us, and of course there's a wide spectrum, not everybody, it's not one extreme of the other. It's not either you have an excellent home or a terrible home, you can have something in between. And we're probably most of us somewhere in between. Does not mean that just because you were deprived or something was missing, that all is lost. It means that this may be a lacking thing in your life, but as we say, Yedias hamachla es chetzi refuah. Knowing the cure, knowledge of the illness, of the problem is half a cure. So the first thing is identifying the culprit, so to speak. If you're having issues with commitment, with fear, with insecurity, most likely it goes back to your home life, your childhood years. Now that doesn't mean you have to go now into therapy for years and years and try to analyze it. That helps great. It means, however, that you have to compensate for this. Because you're not going back to be 2 years old again. You can't go back to your mother's womb. But you can create a womb where you are right now. And that means you have to create a home in your own life. And a home doesn't always mean I don't mean just physically get married and build a family. A home also means a home for your soul. There are many people who are in relationships and get married and not necessarily build homes. They may build houses. So the first thing you have to know is that the purpose of your life is to create, is to know that this world is by nature not a conducive environment, a place where you can celebrate your vulnerability. Let's put it that way. Because predators will take advantage. So you have to create an oasis. A few weeks ago when we spoke about the chapter Noach, so the Baal Shem Tov says an interesting thing. Noach was told to build an ark to protect from the floodwaters. But the word for ark used there is teva. Teva in Hebrew, there's other words for a boat or a ship. Aniyah, sfina. He's told the word teva. So the Baal Shem Tov says teva also means word. The word teva means word. In Hebrew, tevot are words. And he says that a person has to surround themselves. The floodwaters, the raging floodwaters are the Mayim Rabim, are the floodwaters of all the worries and anxieties we have, especially around financial matters. This was the Baal Shem Tov long before there was Wall Street and economic meltdowns. And he says that the only thing to protect yourself from the anxieties of life, and especially issues around financial anxieties, is to protect yourself by surrounding yourself with words, holy words of prayer and of Torah. So in the morning, in Jewish tradition, you start the day before you go to work with prayer and study. Words that surround us. Holy words are like a boat. They help you, lift you to float above and somewhat protect you from the raging floodwaters around you. So one important thing is you have to create. You talk about a home. It's not just, as I said, a physical home. It's creating an ability to separate yourself from the anxieties of this world. Because as I say, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. So either you're going to be consumed by it, as the scouts, Meraglim, when they came back from the promised land, they came back and they said the famous words, Eretz Echeles Yeshva, it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. Now they weren't mistaken, they were right, it is a land that consumes its inhabitants. However, God said, I'll give you the power to overcome that challenge. Who has not been in some way consumed by material life, about the worries of our lives? You know, once you leave your home, once you go into the business world, everybody, somewhat, their standards go or drop lower. There was a chassid who was a very big scholar and a very big ovid, as they call him. He was a very devout man. But then after he left yeshiva and went into business, this was in Russia, he went into the galoshes manufacturing business. So the galoshes manufacturing business, he made a lot of money then, because remember this was the time of the shtetl. In the shtetl there were no paved roads. So galoshes saved many shoes, let's put it that way. So it was a very good innovation of its time, galoshes. I don't know about today, but then galoshes was a good investment. So he made a lot of money. And of course, as you make money, the more you make, the more worries there are. He got so immersed in his business, he didn't have much time for anything else. So one day he comes back for Rosh Hashanah to his Rebbe. His Rebbe looks at his face and sees right away that this great student of his, who once was in a different world, was thrown into this new world of his. So he smiled and said to him in Yiddish, he said, Ich hab gesehen Fies in Galoshen, aber ich hab keine gesehen a Kopf in Galoshen. Which means I've seen feet in galoshes, but I've never seen a head in galoshes. What he meant was, of course, that his mind and his whole being was so immersed that it was all in galoshes. You have to always reserve, as they say, keep your feet firmly planted on the ground, but your head should be somewhat in a little part of it reserved for heaven. There was another chas, just to give another example, who was also both a scholar, a businessman. At the end of the year, when he would make his cheshbonos, his calculations, so he wrote like Tishrei, or say January income and expenses, February income and expenses, March income and expenses, with all their numbers. And then when it came to the sum total after December, or Elul, he wrote Sachakel, the total. He wrote Ein Eid Movade. The total is there's nothing but God, not a number. You know, he was, he realized that the sum total of all of existence is not dollars and money. So everyone asked the question: if he's such a devout person, how did he have the presence of mind to write numbers on every line? He should have written January equals God, February equals God, March equals God, and then at the end, of course, its total is God. The answer is, if that was the case, he shouldn't go into business. He should go into kollel and become a Rosh Yeshiva or something. He was a businessman. A businessman, Masha Matna B'Amunah, means you have to do your business ethically and soundly. So you have to know your numbers. But after everything is said and done, the sum total of it all is not a number, something higher. So this is somewhat balancing two worlds. Judaism does not preach asceticism, and you have to escape from this world and go onto a mountain and discover the divine. Judaism very much engages this universe, as opposed to other philosophies. Actually, as I mentioned, the scouts, the Meraglim, one of their great sin was they didn't want to engage the world. They wanted to remain in the oasis of the wilderness where God protected them. So Judaism insists on engaging the world, but never becoming part of it, never becoming consumed by it, and becoming enslaved by it. To go there and refining it, that's the key. So you can become either consumed or refining it, which means it's matter for you to turn into energy. It's matter for you to turn into fuel, divine fuel. To make a home out of a hostile material world that is selfishly driven, and turn it into a place that is divinely driven. That's work, hard work. Because it's one thing to escape it all. That's relatively easy. As a matter of fact, the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and even the tribes, they were all shepherds. A shepherd is somewhat an ascetic lifestyle. You tend to the sheep are very docile, and you can sit and pray, meditate on the meadows and the nature of God, and connect to something higher. Who was the first so-called Jewish leader thrown into the business world? Was Joseph, against his will. He became first Jewish accountant, as the Targum says. He was the Mari the Chishbon. He made the calculations for Potiphar. And then he became the big viceroy of Egypt, where he was the man. He turned a country into a superpower because he knew how to manage and to stockpile on the grain. And during the famine, everyone was dependent on Egypt. And it says, who's greater, Joseph or the patriarchs? And the answer is that Joseph, after Jacob, for 22 years they were separate, comes and meets him, he sees that he still remembered with the Torah they studied together, and he realized even though he was immersed in this business world, and much worse, Eretz Haaretz, than just business world, it was a corrupt, decadent nation, and still maintained his spiritual integrity, he realized that's much harder than to be a shepherd in the meadows. So you talk about building a home. A home is living in the hostile environment, but creating the oasis, creating an environment that transforms the universe. Not only doesn't affect you, but you affect it. And if you think it's not connected to your building a home in your own personal life, that is finding your soulmate and building a good, healthy family, a nurturing one, you're mistaken. Because if you can't build one for your soul in this difficult material world, it's going to be very difficult to build it with another person. Because the fact is, we're either, as I said, part of the solution or part of the problem. You're either being influenced by this world or you are influencing it. There's no third option. Bystanders, or so-called observant Jews, meaning those that observe, and are not players, are part of the problem. Meaning you have to either be proactive or you will be reactive. That's how it works. We don't live in a neutral universe. This world is either, as I said earlier, a deceptive world, a duplicitous one, or one that you will change into something truthful. This chapter, though I didn't discuss it in detail, is very much about this, how Jacob dresses in the garments of Esau, in order to refine the world of Esau. I discussed it other weeks, but if you want the connection to the chapter, it's hinted here as well. I want to say, when home doesn't feel like home, no matter what our pasts were like and our childhoods were like, your life begins right now. That's the bottom line. The future is in your control. In Judaism, there's no such thing as a concept of resignation and I can't do something because my childhood was not healthy, or someone shaped my life. Rabbi Lau in Israel, when he came to the United States the first time was 1974. It was right after the Yom Kippur War, and he was a Holocaust survivor. He was the chief rabbi of Israel, then now today of Tel Aviv. And he came to see the Rebbe, and he went in and he asked him, what is the mood in Israel like? Now, after the Yom Kippur War, it was not exactly a great mood, because there were many losses of lives, over 2,000 lives. It was not like the euphoria after the Six-Day War, etc., etc. So he said it's very, Jews are asking, the way he said it, Eden Fnegen, Jews are asking, was wird sein? What's going to be? Was wird sein is one of these Jewish expressions. It's almost like oy vey. Was wird sein? What's going to be? Or ma yeh in Hebrew, or what will be? And he said that the Rebbe grabbed his hand and said to him, I never heard Jews ask such a question. Jews don't ask what will be, they ask ma naseh, was geht man tun? Not what will be, what are you going to do about it? What happened after the Holocaust? There have been very good reasons that millions of people who survived should have given up everything after what they saw, witnessed, and after broken such destruction. Yet, whether you can understand it or not, they rebuilt, and they built families, and there's a renaissance of Jewish life today, 60 years later. Impossible to fathom such a thing. It can only come from a certain reservoir of hope and faith that even the person who has it doesn't fully understand. It's just, you have to forge ahead. It's our parents knew that in Egypt, and they knew it through all the massacres, that if it won't be us, it'll be our children. If it won't be our children, it will be their children. And yes, today we are living in a free world that our grandparents would never have imagined. But they, like in a marathon, they passed the baton on and did not give up. Even though it was despite all odds, and logically and mathematically, etc., it didn't seem possible. This is what means building homes. They built homes. It says that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they were the three people who who went through their own Holocaust. Now, what did they do afterwards? They went. It says in the Medrash, they went and they built homes and families. It seems like a contradiction. It seems like you should go into therapy forever after this. All the Jews that came out of the Holocaust should have been sitting in therapy. That's what Americans do, right? Instead, no, they built homes. They saw the greatest hostility ever witnessed by human beings. Destruction of not just homes, communities, cities, entire world. And they went and rebuilt. Because there's a certain element that comes with faith that keeps a person going in that direction. That is our legacy, and that is our power. So, the concept of saying what will be is just not a possible concept when you're a person of faith and a person that believes in the unfathomable power of the soul. So no matter what your pasts are like, the fact of the matter, life begins right now, which means you have within ourselves, we each have the power to build a home. On all the levels I discussed tonight, whether it's in a physical level, whether it's in a spiritual level, whether it's a psychological level. Obviously, it all begins in your own attitude. Shachanti b'seicham means that the divine rests in you. You have within you a soul. Your body is its physical abode. How will your body nurture, protect, and allow your soul to express itself in this world? Or will your soul be trapped like a hostage by the physical temptations and desires and seductions of the universe? It's a choice we all have to make all the time, every move we make. And that's where the first home is built. What does your soul have a home within you? Does it feel comfortable within you? Does your inner personality, your calling, so to speak, your higher mission that I discussed earlier, is it have a place that is comfortable or not? When you have that, that's when your salvation begins. Everything else follows. So you may ask, so if that's the case, until I have that, I should not be able to build a home with a spouse and build a family? No, it's not the case. You do it all together. But it does come all together. What do you think really is a home? It's a home where souls feel comfortable in this world, and no matter how hostile and how cruel and how selfish, you find places where you can be that you know you can completely trust. And you have that trust allows you to face a world where there is no trust and build a home for the divine. So I want to say on this this evening, even though Thanksgiving may not be a per se Jewish holiday, but as I said earlier, it is in the spirit of Judaism, the idea of thanking God for gifts, thanking God for every gift. This is a universal divine thing to do, not to take for granted our situation. So this challenge of family and home is something that can be looked at as exactly that, a challenge, not something that has to overcome us. So I want to just say a humble blessing to everybody here. May you use your tools and your gifts to recognize the unique and indispensable neshama, soul, that each of you have, because there's no person on this earth that doesn't have something absolutely indispensable to contribute, or else we wouldn't need two of the same. So we are all unique musical notes, and our mission is to discover that note and play your music. And the rest of your life, which is your body and your physical tools, are like tools. They're the means to help you express why your soul was sent to this earth, which is to sanctify your life through the good deeds and virtues and mitzvahs that you do, and to illuminate ner mitzvah Torah, to illuminate the world around you, and above all and through that, above all, to help refine the corner of the universe that was given to you, and to turn that into a home. So even though there may be other corners that are still far from that place, there's a certain ripple effect that we can all achieve when we commit to that type of activity. So each of us is given our little corner. And if we unite our corners, we believe that when they will all unite, there will be a certain accumulative force that will turn the entire universe into finally a civilized and divine home, and where there's a complete seamlessness between matter and energy, between the divine and the mundane, and that what we call a dira b'tachtenim, in the full sense that the entire universe in a way becomes a divine temple. And then, of course, the temple in Jerusalem is of course elevated to a higher level. But that is ultimately the purpose, to take your material and turn it into a divine home, to a structure that the divine feels comfortable, your soul feels comfortable, and by extension, each of us that enter that place will feel comfortable. So those of you that need a blessing to actually build a physical home, may God bless you to find your appropriate soulmate, as discussed last week, soulmate, and together build a home that anyone entering that place, they call Beis Vad L'Chachamim, a home that makes you complete. As it says in the Talmud, Ein Adam B'lei Bayis, a person is not complete without a home. In heaven, you may not need it, but on earth, due to the hostile elements, it's critical to have that type of warmth. And if you invite me to that home, I'll come and let you know if I feel comfortable. And of course, I'll invite you to mine as well. So, with that being said, I will also share with some people that asked me, so as before the class, I have a personal little simcha I would like to share with you and also with the web audience. Even though, I have absolutely ecstatic feelings about it, but so yesterday, my daughter gave birth to a daughter.
Wow,
So in fact, I've now moved into the stage of calling a Zayd, a grandfather. So, yes. So now I hope I can earn a new level of respect from all of you. It's actually not really earned. This is the dividends of life. And God should bless you all with simchas and healthy children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And the homes, build homes that will nurture them above all. and don't mind the expenses involved. The pales in comparison. So we should all only celebrate simchas together, joys together, build healthy homes, and obviously in a class like this you can't exhaust the topic completely. I'd be happy to, if people have questions, you could either email me or write me or discuss it with me, or we can elaborate further if you want to go deeper into this topic. Be happy to. We have now the space here, which is also a home. In, I won't say hostile East Village, it's just the East Village is not. But it is a part of this universe as well. And please see this as a place where you can feel comfortable, your souls can feel comfortable. And I mentioned, if anybody wants to study one-on-one with anyone, or a chavrusa type of thing, or small groups or anything like that, please come over to me, or my good colleague Velva right over there, waving. And really, this is a place, we have it here. Feel free if you'd like to come for a lunch and learn or something like that. Slowly we are furnishing it, and as you'll see, it's getting warmer and warmer. It'll soon be a real, hopefully nurturing environment. And with that being said, so next week I shall resume, next Wednesday night. I will be here, 8:15. Again, if you haven't left your email addresses, please do so. First of all, I send out a weekly email that I'm happy to send you, as well as any updates or information about the activities going on here. The main next activity, the big show, so a big event, next event is the Hanukkah on the 5th night of Hanukkah, the Thursday night, December 25th at night. That means Thursday night after December 25th. We'll have a whole Hanukkah lighting and a little party here with some drums, a drum event as well. And if you'd like to know more information or sign up, just tell Velvel as well. And let's see, anything else I have to announce? If anybody's interested in sponsoring a class in honor of someone, a loved one, or special anniversary or date, also please see Velvel. Okay, I think that goes for the announcements. I bid everyone good night, as well as to the web audience. Don't worry, I was the only one on camera, so you're all preserved your anonymity. Don't worry about it. Okay, everyone have a good night. Thank you so much.